The salvage ship moved slowly through the dark space between the stars. Captain Zeta looked out at the floating pieces of metal and plastic that spread out in front of them like a cloud of broken dreams. His blue skin showed the worry lines that came with 20 years of deep space work. The debris field stretched for millions of miles in every direction. Another human ship, said Lieutenant Vexillum from her station. Near the back of the bridge, her 6 arms moved across the controls. Like a dancer, the markings say it was called the New Horizon. Zeta nodded and walked closer to the main viewing screen. Humans were still new to the galaxy. They had only joined the Galactic Council 15 years ago. Most other races had been traveling between stars for thousands of years, but humans were quick learners. They built good ships and were friendly enough, even if they seemed to worry about everything. "How long has it been floating out here?" he asked. "The computer says about 2 years. Vexillum replied. She touched more buttons and numbers appeared on the screen. "It looks like it was destroyed in a fight. I could see blast marks from energy weapons." Dr. Kessara walked onto the bridge. She was tall and thin, with gray skin and large black eyes. As the ship's expert on dead civilizations, she had seen many destroyed vessels, but something about this one made her feel uneasy. "The damage pattern is strange," she said, pointing at the screen. "These blast marks don't match any known council weapons, and look at how the metal is twisted. This wasn't just an explosion. Something pulled the ship apart." Engineer Praxton joined them at the viewing screen. He was short and stocky, with thick arms and green skin. "I've seen damage like this before," he said quietly, "in the old war records, but those weapons haven't been used for 1,000 years. Zeta felt a cold feeling in his stomach. The old wars were something most people tried to forget. Entire star systems had been destroyed. Billions had died. The council had been formed to make sure such wars never happened again. "Let's focus on the salvage work," he said. "Scan for survivors first, then look for anything valuable we can recover." The next few hours passed slowly. The crew worked carefully, moving through the debris piece by piece. They found no signs of life. The human crew of 300 had all died when their ship was destroyed. The bodies they found showed signs of vacuum exposure and energy weapon burns. "Captain," called Vexillum, "I think I found something important." She had been working in the lower cargo area of their ship, examining a large piece of the human vessel's hull. Inside the twisted metal, something black and square was wedged tight. "What is it?" Zeta asked as he climbed down to look. "It looks like a human flight recorder," Vexillum said. "What they call a black box. It's designed to survive when a ship is destroyed." Dr. Kessara joined them, running her scanner over the device. "It's definitely human technology," she confirmed, "but it looks badly damaged. I'm not sure we can get any information out of it." Praxton took the scanner and studied the readings. "The outer case is cracked, and there's no power reading, but human engineering is different from ours. They build things to last longer than they should." They carefully removed the black box from the wreckage and brought it to their ship's main laboratory. It was about the size of a small suitcase, made of some kind of dark metal that felt warm to the touch. Strange symbols were carved into its surface, along with words in human writing. "New Horizon Flight Recorder," Dr. Kessara read aloud. "Property of human colonial fleet. Authorized personnel only. Can we access it?" Zeta asked. Praxton set up his equipment around the device. "I'll try the standard data recovery methods first. Every council species uses similar systems, so this should work." For the next 3 days, the crew tried everything they knew. They used electromagnetic pulses, quantum field manipulators, and even tried heating and cooling the device to different temperatures. Nothing worked. The black box remained silent and dark. "Human technology is more complicated than we thought," Praxton said, wiping sweat from his green forehead. "They seem to have built this thing to resist every type of data extraction method I know." Dr. Kessara studied the device with new interest. "Maybe that's the point," she said. "Humans come from a world where they fought each other for thousands of years. They're probably naturally suspicious of anyone trying to steal their information." "So how do we get inside?" Vexillum asked. "Maybe we don't," Zeta said. "Maybe we need to make it want to talk to us." Praxton looked confused. "It's a machine, Captain. It doesn't want anything, but it was built by humans," Dr. Kessara said, slowly, "and humans think differently than we do. What if they built it to only activate under certain conditions?" They spent another day studying the device, looking for hidden switches or sensors. Braxton tried different power levels and frequencies. Vexillum examined every scratch and mark on its surface. Dr. Kessara read everything she could find about human technology and psychology. Finally, Braxton decided to try one more approach. I'm going to increase the power output of my extraction beam, he said. If this doesn't work, I think we should give up. He adjusted his equipment and activated the beam. The power reading climbed higher than it had before. Sparks began to fly from some of his instruments. Careful, Zeter warned. Don't damage our own systems. Suddenly, there was a bright flash of light. Braxton jumped back as his equipment overloaded. Smoke filled the air, and alarms began to sound throughout the ship. But then, in the middle of all the chaos, something wonderful happened. The black box began to glow with a soft blue light. A gentle humming sound filled the room. And then, clear as if the speaker was standing right next to them, a human voice began to talk. This is Commander Jake Morrison of the human colony vessel New Horizon. If you're hearing this, then either we made it home, or we didn't. But either way, you need to know what we found out here, and what it means for everyone. The 4 alien crew members stood frozen, staring at the glowing device. None of them had ever heard a human voice speak with such calm determination. There was something in Commander Morrison's tone that made them all lean forward, knowing that whatever he was about to tell them would change everything they thought. They knew about the galaxy. The recording continued, and they listened in complete silence, not knowing that they were about to learn the most important secret in the history of the known universe. Commander Morrison's voice filled the laboratory like he was standing right there with them. Captain Zeter motioned for everyone to be quiet. They all gathered around the glowing black box, afraid to make any sound that might interrupt the recording. We were 3 months into our deep space survey mission when we detected something strange. Morrison continued. His voice was steady, but there was an edge to it that made Zeter's skin crawl. The readings were coming from the Proxima Void, a region that's supposed to be empty space. Dr. Kessara's eyes went wide. She knew the Proxima Void well. It was a large area of space at the edge of Council territory. The best scientists in the galaxy had studied it for years. Their most advanced sensors had found nothing there except old cosmic dust and radiation. Command had always told us the void was empty, Morrison's voice went on. But our sensors were picking up massive energy signatures. Something was out there, something big. We should have called for help right away, but our communication system had been damaged 2 weeks earlier when we flew through an asteroid field. In the background of the recording, they could hear other human voices talking. Someone was reading out numbers and coordinates. Another voice mentioned something about unknown energy patterns, a possible hostile contact. What we found, there changed everything we thought we knew about the galaxy, Morrison said. The Proxima Void isn't empty. It's hiding something that's been watching all of us. Lieutenant Vexillum's 6 arms trembled slightly. She had been to the edge of the void many times during her service with the Council fleet. She had never seen anything unusual there. The structures we discovered were huge, Morrison continued. Each one was easily the size of a small moon. They were clearly built by someone, but not by any species we recognized. The energy signatures didn't match anything in our databases. Braxton leaned closer to the black box. Structures. What kind of structures? As if answering his question, Morrison's voice provided more details. The positioning was what scared us the most. These weren't research stations or colonies. They were positioned to control the major hyperspace routes that lead to the core worlds. Someone had placed them there for a reason. Dr. Kessara felt her heart racing. The hyperspace routes Morrison was talking about were the main highways that connected all the inhabited worlds in the galaxy. If someone controlled those routes, they could cut off entire star systems from each other. We managed to get closer to one of the structures, Morrison said. Close enough to see what was docked there. Ships, thousands of them, maybe tens of thousands. The designs were completely alien, but the way they were arranged was clearly military. The recording crackled with static for a moment, and Morrison's voice became more urgent. This wasn't a research mission or a peaceful colony. This was a fleet, a massive invasion fleet, and it was aimed right at the heart of Council space. Captain Zeter felt his blood turn cold. An invasion fleet of that size could destroy entire civilizations. The Council had been at peace for so long that most worlds had only small defense forces. We tried to get more information, Morrison continued. We needed to know who they were, what they wanted, where they came from. But the moment we got too close, everything changed. The background noise in the recording shifted. Now they could hear alarms, blaring and people shouting orders. The sound of running feet echoed through the human ship. They detected us, Morrison said, his voice now strained with effort. But they didn't just attack us. They tried to capture us. They wanted us alive. Dr. Kessara exchanged worried glances with the others. Most space battles ended quickly, with one ship destroying the other. But if these aliens wanted to capture the humans, that meant they wanted information. The aliens used some kind of beam weapon that grabbed our ship, Morrison explained. But it wasn't just a tractor beam. It started connecting to our computer systems, trying to download our navigation data, our star charts, everything we knew about Council space. Vexilum's antenna twitched nervously. That's impossible, she whispered. Council security systems would prevent any unauthorized access. Morrison's voice provided the answer. Our chief engineer, Pete Collins, realized what was happening. He said the aliens were using the type of technology that could break through most standard security systems, but humans have always been paranoid about digital security. We build our computers differently than other species. The sound of explosions could be heard in the background now, getting closer to wherever Morrison was recording. His voice remained calm despite the chaos around him. Pete managed to reverse the connection, Morrison said, instead of them taking our information. We started copying theirs. For a few minutes, we had access to their entire database. What did you find? Braxton asked the recording, even though he knew it couldn't answer him. What we learned in those few minutes was terrifying, Morrison continued. This isn't just one fleet. There are dozens of them, positioned at strategic points all around the galaxy. They've been watching us, studying us, learning about us, and they've been planning something big. The recording quality got worse as more explosions sounded. Morrison had to speak louder to be heard over the noise. The species calls themselves the Devourers, he said, and they're not interested in conquest the way we understand it. They don't want to rule us or enslave us. They want to consume us completely. Dr. Kessara felt sick. Consume us? What does that mean? Morrison's voice provided the horrible answer. They absorb entire civilizations, not just the resources or the territory, but the knowledge, the culture, the very essence of what makes each species unique. They've done this before, many times in other galaxies. The human commander paused, and they could hear him breathing heavily. When he spoke again, his voice was filled with a mixture of fear and determination. We found records in their database. Hundreds of dead civilizations, each one completely absorbed and cataloged before being erased from existence. They study a species for years, learning everything about them, and then they strike all at once. Captain Zeter's legs felt weak. The idea of entire civilizations being wiped out was almost too horrible to imagine. The worst part is how they've been hiding, Morrison continued. They use a technology that bends space and time around their positions. To our sensors, it looks like empty space, but they're there, watching everything we do. How did you find them then? Vexilum asked the recording. Pure accident, Morrison replied. Our damaged communication ray was broadcasting on a frequency that interfered with their cloaking technology. If we hadn't been sending out that distress signal, we never would have seen them. The explosions in the background were getting louder now. Morrison's voice became more urgent. They're breaking through our defenses. We don't have much time left, but we've learned something important, something that might give the galaxy a chance to fight back. The recording suddenly cut to static, leaving the four aliens staring at the black box in shocked silence. After a few seconds, the device glowed brighter, and Morrison's voice returned. If anyone finds this recording, you need to understand what you're facing. The Devourers are coming, and they're more dangerous than anything the galaxy has ever seen. But they're not invincible. We found their weakness. The black box pulsed with blue light, and the crew leaned forward, desperate to hear what the human commander had discovered. The fate of every living being in the galaxy might depend on what Jake Morrison was about to tell them. The key is understanding how they think, Morrison said, and more importantly, understanding how they don't think. We've found a way to fight them, but it requires every species in the Council to work together in a way we've never done before. The recording continued, but now there was something different in Morrison's voice. Despite the explosions and chaos around him, there was hope. The hope in Morrison's voice didn't last long. The sound of metal tearing and systems failing grew louder in the recording. Captain Zeter and his crew listened in silence. As the human commander continued his desperate message, we managed to learn more about the Devourers before they cut off our connection, Morrison said. His breathing was getting heavier, and they could hear him moving around, probably trying to reach safety. What we discovered about their methods is both terrifying and useful. A new voice joined the recording. It was a woman speaking quickly and with authority. This is Dr. Lisa Park, the New Horizon Science Officer. I've been analyzing the data we stole from their systems. The Devourers have a very specific way of operating. Dr. Kessara perked up at hearing another scientist, even if she was human. Dr. Park continued talking over the sound of alarms and distant explosions. They've been using the same approach for millions of years, Park explained. First, they study a galaxy from the outside, learning about all the different species and their technologies. Then they position their fleets at strategic points and wait. Wait for what? Vexillum whispered to herself. They wait until the civilizations in the galaxy reach a certain level of development. Park answered, as if she had heard the question. When the species are advanced enough to be useful, but not advanced enough to pose a real threat. The Devourers strike. Morrison's voice returned. The attack is always the same. They hit every major world at exactly the same time. No warnings, no negotiations, no mercy. Within days, entire civilizations are gone. Braxton felt his tools shaking in his hands. The idea of such coordinated destruction was beyond anything he had imagined. How many galaxies have they destroyed? Dr. Park's voice provided the horrible answer. We found records of at least 300 successful conquests, billions of species, trillions of individual lives, all consumed and cataloged. Each galaxy's knowledge and culture becomes part of their database. And then the galaxy is left empty. But why? Dr. Kessara asked. The recording. What do they gain from this? Knowledge is power to them, Morrison explained. Every species they absorb makes them smarter, more adaptable, more dangerous. They take the best ideas from each civilization and use them to improve their own technology and methods. The sound of weapons fire suddenly became much louder. Human voices were shouting orders and battle reports. Someone yelled that the hull was breaching in 3 different sections. They're boarding us, Morrison said, his voice tight with strain. But we've learned something important about their weakness, something that might save the galaxy. Dr. Park's voice cut in, speaking very fast now. The Devourers are incredibly advanced, but they're also predictable. They've used the same tactics for so long that they can't adapt when something unexpected happens. What do you mean? Captain Zeter asked the recording. They study each species for years before attacking. Park explained. They learn everything about how we think, how we fight, how we react to threats. Then they plan their attack based on that knowledge. But what happens when a species does something they've never seen before? Morrison's voice became clearer, as if he had found a safer place to hide. That's where humans come in. We're the newest species in the galaxy, and we think differently than everyone else. The alien crew looked at each other with confusion. Humans had seemed fairly normal to them. If a bit excitable and prone to worry about everything, we've spent our entire history fighting each other, Morrison continued, not just wars between nations, but constant competition and conflict. We've developed strategies and tactics that don't follow logical patterns. Dr. Park's voice joined in again. Most council species fight in organized, predictable ways. When threatened, they form defensive formations and try to minimize losses. Humans fight dirty. We use deception, surprise attacks, and sacrificial tactics that don't make sense to logical minds. The sound of energy weapons grew closer. Morrison had to shout to be heard. The Devourers have studied every council species. They know exactly how each race will respond to their attacks. But they've never encountered humans in a real fight. Pete Collins' voice could be heard in the background, yelling something about overloading the engine core and buying them more time. Morrison's voice became more urgent. We've developed a plan, he said. It's desperate, and it requires sacrifice. But it's the only way to give the galaxy a fighting chance. What kind of plan? Vexillum asked, though she was afraid to hear the answer. We're going to make ourselves the bait, Morrison replied. The New Horizon has an experimental engine core, a prototype hyperdrive that was designed to be faster than anything in the galaxy. We're going to overload it. Dr. Kessara's eyes went wide. Overloading a hyperdrive core was one of the most dangerous things anyone could do. The explosion would be visible across entire star systems. The energy release will create a massive subspace distortion, Dr. Park explained. The Devourers will think we're trying to escape with critical information about their plans. They'll follow us with everything they have. But that's suicide. Paxton said quietly. Morrison's voice confirmed his fear. We know. But if we can draw their main fleet away from the Proxima Void, it will give the Council time to prepare. More importantly, it will give you time to use the information we're leaving behind. The recording crackled with interference as more systems failed on the human ship. When Morrison's voice returned, it was calmer, more resigned. We're uploading everything we learned to this black box, all our data about the Devourers, their technology, their methods, their weaknesses. But the most important thing we're leaving you is proof that they can be beaten. Dr. Park's voice was getting harder to hear over the noise of battle. The key is in understanding their psychology. The Devourers have never faced a species willing to sacrifice everything for others. They can't understand altruism, and they can't predict it. Every human military doctrine, every tactical manual, every strategy we've ever developed is in this recording, Morrison added. Share it with the Council species. Let them adapt our methods to their own strengths. Captain Zeter felt a strange emotion building in his chest. These humans were going to die, but they were spending their last moments trying to save people they had never met. We've also mapped their positions, Morrison continued, every staging area, every supply route, every communication relay we could identify. The locations are all in the black box data files. The sound of explosions was getting closer again. Human voices were reporting that the Devourers had broken through their defenses and were moving through the ship. They're almost here, Morrison said. But we bought enough time to finish the upload. Everything you need to know is in this black box. Dr. Park's voice came through one last time, barely audible over the chaos. Tell the galaxy that humans don't surrender. Tell them that freedom is worth any price. The recording suddenly filled. With a sound like thunder, the engine core was beginning to overload. Morrison's voice became distant, as if he was moving away from the recorder. This is Commander Jake Morrison, making my final log entry. The New Horizon is about to become the brightest star in the galaxy, but our light will guide others to victory. The sound of the approaching explosion grew louder, but instead of fear, Morrison's voice carried determination and hope. To whoever finds this recording, remember what you learned here today. The Devourers think they understand us, but they're about to learn something new about the human spirit. The recording cut to static just as the explosion began. The black box fell silent, leaving the four aliens staring at each other in the quiet laboratory. Each of them was thinking the same thing. They had just witnessed the bravest act in galactic history. Captain Zeter slowly reached for his communication controls. The Council needed to hear this message immediately. The galaxy was in more danger than anyone had imagined, but the humans had given them something precious, hope and a plan. To fight back, the black box pulsed once more with soft blue light, as if Jake Morrison and his crew were saying goodbye. The silence in the laboratory stretched on for long minutes. Captain Zeter stared at the black box, trying to process everything they had just heard. The weight of the human sacrifice pressed down on him like a heavy stone. We need to contact the Council immediately, Dr. Kesara said quietly. Her voice shook slightly as she spoke. Before Zeter could respond, the black box suddenly glowed brighter. New sounds emerged from the device, but these were different from Morrison's recording. They could hear multiple human voices talking, quickly, working together under extreme pressure. Additional files detected, announced an automated voice from the black box. Accessing supplementary data records. Dr. Park's voice returned, but now she sounded more scientific and focused. If you're hearing this, then the primary recording has finished playing. This is our technical analysis of everything we learned about the Devourers. Lieutenant Vexela moved closer to the device. There's more. We've identified 17 different points of failure in their technology, Park continued. But the most important discovery isn't technical, it's psychological. Pete, Colin's voice joined the recording. He sounded tired, but determined. I've been an engineer for 20 years, worked on ships for 12 different species. Everyone builds their technology based on logical principles, right? Well, humans don't always follow logic. What does that mean? Braxton asked the recording. Collins provided the answer. When most species face a problem, they look for the most efficient solution. Humans look for solutions that work, even if they seem crazy. We take other people's technology and make it do things that original designers never imagined. Dr. Park's voice cut in with excitement. That's exactly what we did with the Devour systems. While they were trying to download our data, we weren't just copying their files. We were studying how their technology thinks. Their computers are incredibly advanced, Collins explained, but they're built around the idea that all intelligent species will behave in predictable ways. Well, we started doing things that didn't make sense to their systems. We found gaps in their defenses. The recording shifted, and they could hear the sound of typing and machines working. Morrison's voice returned, speaking quickly but clearly. We've developed a complete strategy for fighting the Devourers, he said. It's based on human military history, but it can be adapted by any council species. The key is coordination and unpredictability. Double quotes. Dr. Cassara leaned forward. This was exactly what the galaxy needed to hear. The Devourers expect each species to fight alone, using their own traditional methods. Morrison continued. They planned for that, but they haven't planned for every species working together using tactics they've never seen before. Park's voice became excited again. We've created detailed battle plans based on human strategies from our history, but instead of humans fighting humans, it's designed for multiple alien species fighting together against a common enemy, Collins added. Every council species has different strengths. The Catharians are excellent strategists. The Altarians are natural pilots. The Vex have incredible reflexes. If you combine all these abilities using human tactical thinking, you get something the Devourers can't predict. Captain Zeter felt hope building in his chest. Maybe the galaxy wasn't doomed after all. The most important thing is timing, Morrison explained. The Devourers attack every major world at the same time, but if the council species coordinate their response, they can turn that advantage into a weakness. How? Vexilum asked. Park provided the answer. Instead of defending, attack. While the Devourers are focused on their invasion, hit their staging areas and supply lines. They've never had to defend their bases while conducting an attack. We've included detailed maps of every Devourer position we could identify, Collins added. 17 major staging areas, hundreds of supply depots, and 43 communication relays. If you hit them all at the same time, their coordination will collapse. The recording paused for a moment, and they could hear explosions in the background. When Morrison's voice returned, it was strained but still determined. The second part of the strategy is deception, he said. Make them think you're doing one thing while you're actually doing something else. Humans call this misdirection. For example, Park explained, send a large fleet toward one of their staging areas, but have it retreat just before contact. While they're chasing that fleet, hit 3 other targets with smaller forces. Collins laughed. Despite the dangerous situation around him, it's like a magic trick. Get them looking at your right hand while your left hand steals their wallet. The third element is sacrifice, Morrison said, his voice becoming more serious. Not every mission will be successful. Not everyone will come home. But if each loss serves a greater purpose, the sacrifices will add up to victory. Paxton felt uncomfortable with this idea. Most council species tried to minimize casualties in any conflict. Morrison seemed to understand this concern. I know it sounds harsh, but the Devourers have never faced an enemy willing to accept losses for strategic gain. They expect rational bees to preserve their own lives above all else, but humans don't always act rationally. Park added, we'll sacrifice ourselves to save others, even people we've never met. That's something the Devourers can't comprehend or predict. The recording shifted again, and new voices could be heard. Other members of the New Horizon crew were contributing their own expertise. This is Navigation Officer Tony Burke, said a new voice. I've been studying their fleet movements. The Devourers use very precise formations and timing. But if you disrupt their schedule, even by a few minutes, their entire battle plan starts to fall apart. Another voice joined in. Medical Officer, Susan right here. I've analyzed their boarding tactics. They try to capture key personnel alive for interrogation. If you make sure your command staff can't be taken alive, they lose valuable intelligence. Communications Specialist Rick Taylor speaking, said yet another voice. Their command structure relies on constant communication between fleet elements. If you can jam or misdirect their signals, they'll start making mistakes. Captain Zeter realized that the entire human crew had contributed to this recording. Even facing certain death, they had worked together to give the galaxy every possible advantage. Morrison's voice returned one final time. We've uploaded everything to the black box. Battle plans, technical specifications, psychological profiles, strategic maps, and tactical guidelines. But the most important thing we're giving you is proof that the impossible can be achieved. The sound of the approaching explosion was getting louder. Morrison had to shout to be heard over the noise. The new horizon is about to become a weapon. He called out, but our real weapon is hope. The hope that courage and sacrifice can overcome any enemy, no matter how powerful. Dr. Park's voice cut through the chaos one last time. Tell the galaxy that 300 humans looked death in the face and chose to fight back. Tell them that the human spirit cannot be conquered or consumed. The recording filled with the sound of the engine core reaching critical overload. But instead of panic, the human voices were singing something. It was slow and sad, but somehow beautiful. What is that? Dr. Kessara asked. It's a human song, Vexilum replied softly. They sing it to honor the dead and comfort the living. The singing grew louder as more voices joined in, even facing certain death. The humans found strength in their unity and shared purpose. Morrison's voice rose above the singing for one final message. This is Commander Jake Morrison and the crew of the New Horizon. We go into the darkness so that others may see the light. Remember us not for how we died, but for what we died to protect. The explosion began, and the recording dissolved into static. But the echo of human voices singing together seemed to linger in the air, a reminder that courage and hope could survive even the darkest moments. The black box pulsed with soft light and displayed a simple message: data transfer complete. All files accessible. Give them hell. Captain Zeter looked at his crew and saw the same determination in their eyes that he felt in his own heart. The humans had given them more than information. They had given them the will to fight back. The laboratory fell silent except for the gentle humming of the black box. Captain Zeter stared at the device for a long moment, feeling the weight of everything they had just learned. 300 humans had died to give the galaxy this chance, and now it was up to him and his crew to make sure their sacrifice meant something. We need to get this information to the council immediately, Dr. Kessara said. Breaking the silence, her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking slightly. Zeter nodded and moved to the communication panel, but before he could activate it, the black box glowed one more time. A final recording began to play, but this one was different from the others. If you're still listening, came Morrison's voice, calmer now than it had been before. Then you've heard everything we learned about the Devourers. But there's one more thing you need to understand. Lieutenant Vexilum looked puzzled. I thought the recording was finished. This message is specifically for whoever finds this black box. Morrison continued. You're probably feeling overwhelmed right now. The information we've given you seems impossible to act on. How can a few salvage workers convince the entire galaxy to change the way they think about warfare? Braxton laughed nervously. He's right. Who's going to listen to us? Morrison's voice seemed to answer him directly. The answer is simple. You don't need to convince everyone at once. You just need to convince the right people, and those people will convince others. Dr. Park's voice joined the recording. We've studied council politics along with everything else. The galaxy is made up of thousands of different worlds and cultures, but they all share one thing. They want to survive. Start with the military leaders, Morrison suggested. Show them the tactical data first. Soldiers understand the value of good intelligence, even if it comes from an unexpected source. Then contact the scientists, Park added. They'll want to study the technical information about Devourer technology. Once they verify that our data is accurate, they'll support the military response. Colin's voice cut in with practical advice. Don't try to explain everything at once. Give them small pieces of information and let them ask for more. People trust information. They have to work for more than information that's just handed to them. Captain Zeter realized the humans had thought of everything, even how to spread their message effectively. Most importantly, Morrison said, don't let anyone tell you this is impossible. Every great victory in history started with someone believing they could do something everyone else thought was hopeless. The recording paused, and when Morrison's voice returned, it carried a warmth that made the alien crew feel like they were talking to an old friend. We know we're asking a lot from people we've never met, he said. We're asking you to risk everything based on the word of a dead human crew. But sometimes that's what courage means, acting on faith when logic tells you to run away. The Devourers have been successful for millions of years because no one ever fought back, Park explained. Every species they encountered either surrendered or fought alone using predictable tactics. You have the chance to be the first to do something different, and if you succeed, Collins added with obvious pride in his voice, you'll save not just this galaxy, but every galaxy the Devourers might target in the future. The recording quality began to degrade as the final explosion approached, but Morrison's last words came through clearly. Captain Zeter of the salvage vessel Harmony's Edge, he said, using Zeter's name and ship designation. Yes, we know who you are. Your ship's identification beacon is visible to our sensors. Zeter jumped back from the black box in surprise. How could Morrison have known they would be the ones to find the recording? We're not psychic, Morrison said with what sounded like a smile in his voice. But we know that salvage crews are usually the first to investigate debris fields, and we know that Captain Zeter has a reputation for being thorough and honest in his reports. Dr. Kessara looked at Zeter with new respect. Apparently his reputation had spread beyond his own species. Captain, you have a choice to make. Morrison continued, you can file a standard salvage report and let the bureaucrats debate what to do with this information for months or years, or you can take action now. While there's still time to prepare, the Devourers won't wait for the Council to make up their minds. Park at it urgently. Our analysis suggests they'll begin their attack within 6 months. That's barely enough time to coordinate a defense if you start immediately. We're trusting you to make the right decision, Morrison said, not because you're required to, but because you're the kind of person who does the right thing even when it's difficult. The explosion began in earnest now, and Morrison had to shout over the noise. Tell the galaxy that humanity stood when it mattered. Tell them that the New Horizons crew died free. The recording ended with a tremendous roar that shook the black box itself. Then silence returned to the laboratory, leaving the 4 aliens alone with the most important decision in galactic history. Captain Zeter looked at each of his crew members. Vexilum was studying the technical readouts scrolling across her screen. Praxton was already making notes about the engineering data. Dr. Kessara was staring at the star charts that showed Devourer positions throughout the galaxy. What do you think? Zeter asked them. The data is genuine, Praxton said immediately. The technical specifications are too detailed to be fabricated, and the energy readings from the explosion match what we'd expect from an overloaded human hyperdrive. The archaeological evidence supports their claims too, Dr. Kessara added. The damage patterns on their ship are consistent with weapons that haven't been seen for 1,000 years. Vexilum looked up from her console. Captain, I've been analyzing the sensor data from the Proxima Void. If I adjust our instruments based on the frequency information the humans provided, I'm detecting anomalous readings that could be cloaked structures. Zeter felt his heart racing. If Vexilum was right, then the Devourers were exactly where Morrison said they would be. So we believe them, he said. The question is, what do we do about it? We do what Commander Morrison asked us to do, Dr. Kessara said firmly. We make sure the galaxy knows what's coming. Zeter nodded and activated the emergency communication system. Within minutes, he was connected to Admiral Vexori, the highest-ranking military officer in his sector. Admiral, this is Captain Zeter aboard the Harmony's Edge. I need to report an immediate threat to galactic security. Go ahead, Captain, came the reply. We've discovered evidence of a massive alien fleet positioned to attack Council space. The threat is imminent, and we have detailed intelligence about their capabilities and positions. There was a long pause before the Admiral responded. Captain, that's a very serious claim. What kind of evidence are you talking about? Zeter looked at the black box, still glowing softly on the laboratory table. We have a complete tactical analysis provided by a human crew that encountered the enemy fleet. They died getting this information to us. Humans? The Admiral sounded skeptical. Captain, humans have been part of the Council for less than 20 years. What could they possibly know about galactic security that we don't? They know how to fight impossible odds and win, Zeter replied, and they know how to sacrifice everything for the greater good. Over the next hour, Zeter transmitted every piece of data from the black box to Admiral Vexori. He shared the tactical plans, the technical specifications, the location data, and most importantly, the recordings of Morrison and his crew explaining their discoveries. When the transmission was complete, the Admiral was quiet for a long time. Captain, he finally said, if this information is accurate, we're facing the greatest threat in galactic history. Yes, sir, Zeter replied. But the humans also gave us a way to fight back. I'm forwarding this data to the Council Defense Committee. Immediately, the Admiral said, Captain, you and your crew may have just saved the galaxy. As the communication ended, Zeter looked around at his crew. They had started the day as simple salvage workers, but they were ending it as the messengers who brought hope to a galaxy in danger. The black box pulsed one final time and displayed a new message. Message delivered. Mission accomplished. The New Horizon crew thanks you. Dr. Cassara wiped tears from her large black eyes. They're still helping us, even after they're gone. Captain Zeta nodded and made a silent promise to the dead human crew. Their sacrifice would not be forgotten. The galaxy would remember that when the darkness came, 300 humans chose to light a candle rather than curse the night. And now it was time for everyone else to help keep that light burning.